belief that human loyalty exists independent of leverage is a lethal, romantic delusion. The modern civilian projects their own desperate need for social harmony onto predators, assuming alliances are forged through mutual respect. They operate on blind faith, handing over the structural keys to their empire and waiting passively to be betrayed by those they empowered. The Grand Manipulator does not rely on gratitude. The architect of statecraft engineers a system where betrayal is mathematically impossible because it is economically and psychologically ruinous to the betrayer. The era of naive trust ends now. Raw knowledge is merely tactical noise. Structural discipline is absolute. Like this video, subscribe to the Daily Motivation Library to weaponize dark psychology and engineer an unbreakable mental grid. Extract the operational codes from our completed archives for the playlists. The Dark Psychology graphic novel series, Dark Psychology Season 1 and Season 2. Stop swinging the hammer blindly. Build the trap. Look at the modern operator. Look at the desperate, sweating desire to be recognized as an ethical actor in a deeply unethical arena. The human nervous system is an ancient mechanism built for tribal survival, demanding group cohesion at the cost of objective reality. The civilian projects their own internal morality onto ruthless, external predators. They confuse a temporary alignment of interests with a permanent blood oath. The prefrontal cortex is actively suppressed by the chemical flood of oxytocin during social bonding. The host becomes literally blind to the transactional physics of their environment. They hand over the operational keys, their data, their capital, their strategic vulnerabilities, based entirely on a handshake and a fleeting manufactured feeling of camaraderie. When the inevitable betrayal occurs, the civilian is utterly destroyed. They are paralyzed by the shock that an ally could act entirely out of self-interest. They fail to understand the cold, mechanical law of the grid. Loyalty without unexhausted leverage is merely an unpaid debt waiting to be defaulted on. The weak construct their empires on the shifting sand of human gratitude. The sovereign mind constructs the citadel on the bedrock of human greed. To eradicate this biological weakness, vision must be violently realigned to the blood-soaked plains of ancient India. Chanakya, the prime architect of the Mauryan Empire, did not build a dynasty on hope. He built it on the uncompromising mathematics of predictable human behavior. Operating in an era of constant assassination, fractured kingdoms, and absolute ruthlessness, Chanakya stripped away every shred of moral idealism. Conflict is never viewed as a test of righteousness. It is an algebraic equation of power dynamics. Whoever is inferior to another shall make peace with him. Whoever is superior in power shall wage war. Whoever thinks, "No enemy can hurt me, nor am I strong enough to destroy my enemy," shall observe neutrality, extracted from the Arthashastra. In the hyper-accelerated 2026 grid, this ancient doctrine translates directly to the absolute mastery of market positioning and corporate survival. The civilian engages in disputes out of pride. They argue with superiors, launch underfunded campaigns, or attack entrenched monopolies simply because they feel morally justified. Chanakya demands the complete severing of the ego. If you lack the capital, the structural leverage, or the data superiority, you submit. You observe neutrality. You wait in the shadows. You do not strike until the mathematical certainty of absolute erasure is entirely on your side. To wage war while inferior is to engineer your own systemic collapse. The Grandmaster assesses the power dynamic with freezing detachment. acting solely on the physics of leverage, never the heat of emotion. When modern geopolitical architects model the expansion of superpowers, they validate this exact cold calculus. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction and strategic containment is simply the ancient Mandala theory, scaled to a nuclear threshold. The law remains unbroken. Power dictates the geometry of the response. The foundation of statecraft is the terrifying acceptance of human corruptibility. The civilian expects honesty. The Grand Master anticipates greed and engineers a trap to contain it. Just as it is impossible not to taste the honey or the poison that finds itself at the tip of the tongue, so it is impossible for a government servant not to eat up at least a bit of the king's revenue. Extracted from the Arthashastra. This is the biological reality of the human animal. You cannot trust humans not to act like humans. In the modern corporate environment, assuming your partners, employees, or allies will not bleed your resources when unobserved is a fatal strategic error. The civilian relies on trust, waiting in passive anxiety for their allies to remain true. The sovereign operator replaces trust with the architecture of inevitable discovery. You do not ask for honesty. You build an operational grid so tightly audited, so mathematically transparent to your eye alone, that theft or betrayal becomes functionally impossible without triggering immediate ruin. When evolutionary psychologists and economists map the architecture of game theory, they are unknowingly operating on the exact blueprint finalized by Chanakya millennia ago. The Nash equilibrium dictates that individuals will always optimize their own outcomes. Chanakya engineered the board so that the opponent's most selfish, greedy decision mathematically benefits the empire. The trap is built using the enemy's own desires as the structural iron. The illusion of a fair fight is the final delusion of the weak. The battle is never decided on the field. The battle is decided in the dark, months before the first word is spoken. The king shall have his agents in the courts of the enemy, the ally, the middle, and the neutral kings, to spy on the kings, as well as their 18 types of high officials. Extracted from the Arthashastra, information asymmetry is the ultimate weapon. In 2026, espionage is not conducted with cloaks and daggers. It is conducted through data extraction, digital footprint analysis, and the mapping of an adversary's social vulnerabilities. The civilian walks into a high-stakes negotiation blind, reacting only to the information presented to them in the room. They operate entirely on the surface. The strategist has already mapped the opponent's financial debt, their internal corporate rivalries, and their hidden biological vices. The environment is manipulated before the target even realizes they are under siege. When modern intelligence directors engineer the destabilization of a hostile regime, they deploy this exact spatial control. You do not attack the enemy's strength. You locate the ambitious, underpaid subordinate within their ranks. You feed their greed. You sow paranoia among their lieutenants. You fracture their internal citadel so completely that when you finally apply kinetic pressure, the entire structure shatters into dust. This absolute ruthlessness was validated by Niccolo Machiavelli centuries later, who recognized that the sovereign must be both the lion and the fox. But Chanakya was the original architect of the veil. He proved that the unseen blade is the only blade that matters. The true apex predator extracts surrender without ever revealing their position. To adopt the mind of the Grand Manipulator is to step into a freezing, lightless void. It requires the absolute severing of all comfortable civilian illusions. When the psychological trap finally snaps shut, the panic of the adversary is entirely silent. When spatial control is successfully executed, the exhausting, suffocating necessity to constantly defend one's position simply evaporates. The realization takes hold that the hammer never needed to be swung harder. The superior blueprint was the absolute and only requirement. There is a profound, explosive liberation in the realization that the internal citadel is protected by a vast perimeter of calculated inevitability. An untouchable state of sovereign power is achieved. You no longer fear betrayal, because you have engineered a reality where betrayal guarantees the betrayer's absolute erasure. The frantic, desperate motion of the masses and the constant churning of their uncalibrated egos are observed from a position of perfect, immovable stillness. The air becomes clean. The strategic vision becomes terrifyingly sharp. Kinetic potential is completely reclaimed by engineering a reality where the enemy defeats themselves without a single physical exertion on your part. The center of the arena is held, answering only to the uncompromising iron code forged in the lightless void. You are no longer a participant on the board. You are the architect of the grid. The leverage is secured. If this truth shattered your naive idealism, leave your comment below. Like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the Daily Motivation Library to draw your next weapon. Watch other videos in the playlist. The blind are already handing over their empires. Outlast them.